Sphinx is an icon. When you see it for the first time, it's the world's largest mammoth statue, at least for 4,000 years, and it's a mystery.
You've probably seen the headlines. Scientists opened Sphinx hidden chamber. What they found is much worse. The reality? Nobody opened anything dramatic recently, and nothing terrible was found. But the actual story behind the Great Sphinx, the hidden passages that do exist, and the decades of wild speculation might be more interesting than any clickbait conspiracy.
There were long periods of time where the Sphinx was not seen. It was completely covered in sand. And so the idea would imply that maybe there are other structures that are still underneath the sand.
Let's look at what's real, what's myth, and why we keep hoping for something apocalyptic buried under the sand. The Sphinx nobody talks about. The Great Sphinx of Giza sits on the plateau outside Cairo, carved from a single massive limestone outcrop. It has the body of a lion and the head of a human, stretching about 73 meters long and 20 meters high. Most people know the image, but not the scale. Standing next to it, you realize just how enormous this thing is. It was likely built during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre around 2500 BCE, though that date has sparked arguments for decades. The Sphinx is carved from the Makatam Formation bedrock, which means it's not assembled. It was cut directly out of the plateau itself. Over thousands of years, wind, sand, and human interference have eroded the body, knocked off the nose, and left the statue in a perpetual state of decay. Restoration efforts go back to ancient times. The Sphinx has always been a mystery magnet, partly because we have so few inscriptions directly linking it to Khafre, and partly because it just looks like it's guarding something. That aura of secrecy has made it a target for every treasure hunter, mystic, and armchair archaeologist with a theory. The real openings we know exist. Despite the hype, there are actual passages and openings in and around the Sphinx. Nothing apocalyptic, but real features documented by archaeologists. First, there's a major natural fissure running through the body at the waist. It's a crack in the bedrock, not a secret door. It's been there since the limestone was laid down millions of years ago. Then there's the so-called rump passage, a narrow tunnel at the back of the Sphinx that descends into the bedrock beneath the statue. This passage was rediscovered in 1980, though some records suggest it was known in earlier times and later lost or sealed. It's cramped, not some grand corridor, and it leads to a small chamber or dead end depending on which account you read. There's also a hole on top of the Sphinx's head. Some have speculated it was an anchor point for a crown or headdress. Others think it's damage from a later period. None of these openings have produced treasure, curses, or ancient warnings. They're just part of the structure's history. Archaeologists have documented these features carefully, but they don't make headlines because they're not dramatic. A narrow shaft in bedrock doesn't sell books or get clicks. Still, these real passages fuel speculation. If there are some tunnels, why not more? Edgar Cayce and the Hall of Records myth. The idea that a hidden chamber full of lost knowledge lies beneath the Sphinx didn't come from archaeology. It came from Edgar Cayce, an American psychic who made thousands of predictions in the early 20th century. In the 1930s, Cayce claimed that refugees from Atlantis built a Hall of Records near the Sphinx, containing proof of their advanced civilization and prophecies for humanity's future. He said it would be discovered before the end of the 20th century. Cayce's followers took this seriously, and the idea spread through books, documentaries, and eventually the internet.
We conducted a number of low-energy seismographic studies around the base of the Sphinx.
The Hall of Records became a fixture in fringe archaeology. It didn't matter that there was no evidence. Cayce's vision was specific and compelling. Expeditions were launched, permits requested, and ground-penetrating radar deployed, all in search of this mythical vault. Mainstream Egyptologists mostly ignored it, but the story had a life of its own. It tapped into a deep desire for hidden knowledge, for proof that history is not what we've been told. Cayce's Hall of Records is still cited today whenever someone claims a new discovery at Giza. It's the seed from which 1,000 conspiracy theories grew, ground-penetrating radar and what it actually found. In the 1990s, serious scientific teams used ground-penetrating radar and seismic surveys around the Sphinx to map what lies beneath. They did find anomalies, areas where the rock density changed, suggesting voids or cavities. These findings were exciting, but they didn't prove the existence of man-made chambers. One prominent anomaly was investigated further with drilling. The result? A natural cavity in the limestone, not a carved room full of scrolls. Limestone is full of voids, pockets, and weak layers formed over millions of years. Detecting an anomaly is one thing, proving it's artificial is another. Remote sensing can't distinguish between a natural crack and a sealed passage without physical investigation. Egyptian authorities have been cautious about allowing invasive drilling, partly to preserve the monument and partly because so many claims have led nowhere. The gap between detection and discovery is huge. Radar shows a blip. Does that mean a chamber, a fissure, a layer of softer rock, or an old restoration fill? You don't know until you dig, and digging into one of the world's most famous monuments is not taken lightly. So the anomalies remain, tantalizing but unexplained. The water erosion controversy. In the early 1990s, geologist Robert Schoch examined the Sphinx and proposed something that shook Egyptology. He argued that the weathering on the enclosure walls around the Sphinx was consistent with prolonged rainfall, not wind and sand. The problem? Egypt's climate became arid around 5000 BCE. If Schoch is right, the Sphinx could be much older than the traditionally accepted date of 2500 BCE, possibly twice as old or more. This would mean the Sphinx predates dynastic Egypt, built by an unknown culture before the pharaohs. Mainstream Egyptologists pushed back hard. They argue the weathering can be explained by other factors: windblown sand, dew, water from the Nile floodplain, or even the limestone's varying hardness. They also point to the total absence of other evidence for a pre-dynastic advanced culture capable of such a project. Schoch stands by his analysis, and the debate continues. The water erosion hypothesis doesn't require a Hall of Records or Atlantis, it just challenges the timeline. But it's been seized on by alternative history enthusiasts as proof that conventional archaeology is hiding something. In reality, it's a legitimate scientific disagreement, not a conspiracy. The erosion is real. The interpretation is contested. The secret hatch claims and modern clickbait. Fast forward to today, and social media is full of posts claiming scientists have opened a secret hatch on the Sphinx's head, revealing a hidden chamber with much worse contents. These posts cite no sources, link to no peer-reviewed studies, and often recycle old footage or unrelated images. A Facebook post from recent years showed the hole on the Sphinx's head and claimed it was newly opened. That hole has been documented for decades. YouTube videos splice together dramatic music, narration, and vague statements about authorities covering up the truth. None of it checks out. Why do these stories spread so easily? Because they sound plausible enough. The Sphinx is ancient and mysterious. Scientists do use radar, and Egypt does restrict access to certain sites. Mix that with a little imagination and a clickbait title, and you've got a viral post. The complete absence of credible sources doesn't matter to most viewers. They share it, comment, and move on. Real archaeology doesn't work this way. If a significant new chamber were opened, it would be announced by Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities, published in academic journals and covered by mainstream news. It wouldn't debut on a random Facebook page with zero references. What much worse really means. So what does much worse even imply? The phrase suggests something catastrophic, dangerous, or forbidden. Maybe ancient warnings of a coming disaster, cursed artifacts, proof of a forgotten apocalypse, or evidence that shatters our understanding of history. It's the language of horror movies and conspiracy thrillers. But none of the actual findings at the Sphinx fit that description. The real discoveries are fissures, natural voids, erosion patterns, and narrow tunnels. There's no cursed treasure, no alien technology, no doomsday prophecy carved in stone. The sensational language is designed to trigger curiosity and fear, two emotions that drive clicks. It works because we're wired to pay attention to threats and mysteries. But when you look at what archaeologists have actually documented, much worse turns out to be nothing. The most controversial finding is the possibility that the Sphinx is older than we thought, which would be a huge deal for history but hardly a catastrophe. The gap between the clickbait promise and the reality is vast. The truth isn't apocalyptic, it's just not cinematic enough. Why we want there to be something terrible inside? There's a reason these stories never die. Humans are drawn to hidden knowledge, to the idea that something important is being kept from us. The Sphinx is a perfect candidate. It's ancient, massive, mysterious, and located in a country with a long history of archaeological restrictions. That combination breeds speculation. We want there to be a secret chamber because the alternative, that we've already found most of what there is to find, feels disappointing. A hidden vault full of lost wisdom or dire warnings would mean history is bigger and stranger than textbooks admit. It would validate the feeling that we don't have the whole story. Psychologically, the unknown is more exciting than the known. A sealed chamber is full of infinite possibility. An empty tunnel is just geology. So we keep hoping. Clickbait feeds on that hope, packaging it as breaking news. The disappointing truth rarely trends, but the tantalizing rumor spreads everywhere. It's not about evidence, it's about the emotional appeal of mystery, what scientists are still investigating today. Despite all the hype, real scientists are still studying the Sphinx, just not in the way conspiracy videos suggest. Current research focuses on non-invasive methods: laser scanning, photogrammetry, continued remote sensing, and erosion monitoring. These techniques allow archaeologists to map the structure and track changes without drilling or digging. They're looking at how the limestone is degrading, where restoration is needed, and what the subsurface looks like in detail. There are still legitimate unanswered questions. Why was the Sphinx built? Was it really Khafre or someone else? What was the purpose of the Rump Passage? How old is it really? These questions don't make headlines, but they're the unglamorous work of real archaeology. It's slow, methodical, and based on evidence. If new chambers are found, they'll be documented properly and opened carefully, not hyped in a clickbait video. The real mysteries still waiting beneath the sand might be worth more than any invented horror, but they require patience and rigor to uncover. The truth about the Sphinx isn't much worse. It's just less dramatic than the stories we tell ourselves. No secret hatch has been opened, no apocalyptic chamber revealed. What we have are natural voids, ancient erosion, and a monument that still holds a few secrets. Maybe that's enough. The real history, with all its gaps and uncertainties, is still unfolding. And that might be the most interesting mystery of all.